Hey folks, this is Riker with the Gaming News Wrap-Up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include an update on the Path of Exile community outrage, Blizzard games coming to Xbox Gamepass, Diablo 4's beta promising to look at endgame, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before we skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. But before we move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Keeps, which is all about keeping your hair. About 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they reach 35. Some men lean into that shaved head look, but some enjoy having and styling hair and want to know if they have any options. There's no magic cure for baldness, but there are preventative steps to stop it from progressing and keep the hair you have. Keeps is a subscription service that focuses on making it easier and more affordable for men to treat their male pattern baldness, all from the comfort of their home, using clinically proven, research-backed treatments at about half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. Physicians at Keeps will help pick the right treatment plan for you, and every treatment plan comes with a full year of unlimited messaging, so you can contact your prescribing doctor at any time. And then it's as simple as subscribing and having everything you need delivered right to your door, with refill reminders sent to ensure you don't run out of what you need. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/Riker or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/RHYKKER. Starting off with some upbeat news, Terraria became the first game on Steam with over 1 million reviews while keeping its overwhelmingly positive status, with 97% positive reviews. The indie game that started off as 2D Minecraft really grew into its own, and it's a wonderful success story for the small team that made it, with the game having sold over 44 million copies since its release in 2011. And those devs have continued to pour love into the game. They have, at this point, released countless final updates. It's really no surprise that they won Steam's Labor of Love award. In other news, Ubisoft revealed this week that the next Assassin's Creed game is called Assassin's Creed Mirage, and they showed this piece of artwork, which suggests a return to more classic Assassin's Creed adventures. More details will be revealed on September 10th, but according to industry insider Jason Schreier, this game should be a return to the roots of the series, with more stealth, action-oriented gameplay than RPG elements. In other news, the remake of The Last of Us Part 1 has released on PS5, and reviews seem to be quite positive. The original action-adventure game first released in 2013 on PS3 and in 2014 on PS4, and was met with universal acclaim. It's considered one of the most significant games of its generation, and among the best games of all time. It won tons of Game of the Year awards and sold extremely well. The verdict on the remake seems to be, if you've never played the original, this is a must-play. This is the best version of the game. But if you already own the original, well, the full game price point may be a bit steep for some people. You're paying more for this than you paid for the original. The game will release on PC eventually, though we don't currently have a release date. It should also be mentioned, however, that the remake does not include the multiplayer component of the original. While some may argue that the multiplayer was not an important part of the game, the fact remains that the remake does have fewer features, and that is worth mentioning. In other news, Hogwarts Legacy, the open-world action role-playing game set in the Harry Potter universe, which is slated for release in February of 2023 on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, will apparently have a PlayStation-exclusive quest. This is a game that I was surprisingly hyped for, since I'm not really a Harry Potter fan, but the game just looked really cool. And it is disappointing to learn that they're doing these kind of shenanigans. That said, on PC, modders will likely be able to bring this quest back into the game anyway, and it's also unlikely that the quest will be of any real importance in the big picture. But I really can't say I'm a fan of games having content made exclusively for one platform. I get that Sony and Microsoft want people to use their consoles and not the competition's, and I suppose if my choice is to have a game be exclusive to PlayStation, or have one meaningless quest be exclusive to PlayStation, I'd definitely go with the quest. It just sucks that PlayStation and Microsoft are using games as their battlefield to play out their console war, and we, the consumer, are the casualties. And speaking of Sony and Tencent have collectively acquired 30.34% of Elden Ring developer FromSoftware. Sony will own 14.09% specifically. While this may give Sony a bit more of sway when it comes to future FromSoftware titles, they absolutely do not gain any kind of control with this move. The company that owns FromSoftware, the Kadokawa Corporation, still retains 69.66% of all shares, and thus retains complete control. So we shouldn't expect any major changes here, but, you know, maybe a PlayStation exclusive quest for their next title. Who knows? Sony also revealed that it's expanding harder into mobile gaming, spinning up a PlayStation Studios mobile division to create games based on new and existing IPs, with a AAA live service mobile action game already in development. They acquired Savage Game Studios, a relatively new studio that has yet to release a game, but that has some veteran game devs from Rockstar and Wargaming in it, as part of this strategy. As a sobering reminder, folks, the mobile industry has risen to account for slightly over half of all gaming revenue in the world. In other words, PC and console revenue combined don't even add up to the amount of money being made in mobile gaming. In some Halo Infinite news, the game, which released in December 2021 and promised split-screen co-op would release later, has now announced that split-screen co-op is cancelled. While I'm not much of a console gamer, I've certainly been saddened to see the progressive move of console games over the past decade or two away from split-screen multiplayer. I remember as a kid going over to one of my friends to play PlayStation, another friend to play Xbox, and it was always this awesome social experience where we sit around the big box of a CRT TV and sit on a couch together, play, laugh. Couch co-op used to be the norm. There was a time where that was just the default. Now we have a PS5 at home, we have a Nintendo Switch, and I feel like it's a struggle. We really have to go out of our way to find games that have local co-op. And I mean, I get it. To have to render a high graphic fidelity FPS game in 4 quadrants on your screen, it's a lot of strain to put on the console. And you gotta really optimize your game and arguably sacrifice graphics quality compared to a game that only needs to ever render one person's perspective. And I'm sure that over time, more people play games by themselves, and multiplayer has shifted to being over the internet, with friends staying in their own living rooms at home and just jumping on voice chat, rather than having a Saturday where everyone meets up in someone's mom's basement and brings Cheetos. I don't blame the industry for moving in this direction. I just think it's sad that kids these days aren't getting the same real-life social experience with gaming. Yeah, online multiplayer is great, but you can't turn to your buddy and high-five him for that great 360 no-scope headshot, or try to block his view of the TV because he keeps kicking your butt. This is why I've largely moved to board games and Dungeons & Dragons as my go-to when hanging out with friends in person. But how do you folks feel? Do you miss playing games while sitting on the same couch as your buddies, or do you not care? Sound off in the comments. In some quick last Epoch news, the September dev update released, and we're getting ever closer to a publicly playable multiplayer. The team has expanded its community tester program to include about 1,000 users, and they're looking to continue expanding this program in the lead-up to the release of patch 0.9, with multiple waves of invites going out. If you're interested, definitely send in an application for the program. And if you're looking for a solid ARPG to play before the release of Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2, Last Epoch is looking to be a good one. In Path of Exile news, following up on last week's story of the biggest community uproar in the game's history regarding an uncommunicated nerf to the game's loot drops, Community Director Bex has made a post providing the community with an overview of upcoming changes to the game that the team is working on. She highlighted a large number of specific issues that the community has brought up and explained how the devs are either actively working to address them or are otherwise monitoring the situation while actively looking at how to address them. Overall, it was a lot of positive news, significant progress towards addressing player complaints, with acknowledgement of other complaints that remain. Now, this came a few days after lead dev Chris Wilson's last post, which was heavily downvoted on Reddit, which sought to clarify the status of the loot situation following the buffs that the team delivered after the league had begun and after player feedback had come in. In his post, he said, quote, "Please reread the post we made yesterday. It clarifies that drops for average players are where they were before. You find 25% more currency from regular content than you did before the expansion deployed, for example. You find more than 50% more unique items from regular content. There is no winning the lottery needed. This is a misconception that is causing a lot of damage, and I don't know where it came from. The whole point of all this was to tone down the lottery wins to not be 15,000 unique items and to be more appropriate. So the very few elite people took a hit, but are still doing fine, and everyone else benefited. Somehow it created the perception that we did the exact opposite. Now this post, again, was heavily downvoted, and it seems that it was heavily downvoted because a lot of people reading it were likely feeling like they were being gaslit. It's effectively saying, no, if you think you're getting fewer loot drops, you're wrong. You're actually finding more loot drops. To clarify, I'm not making a statement of the fact one way or the other. Chris Wilson may absolutely be correct here, he may be wrong, I don't know, but it doesn't change the fact that his statement was an unpopular one, and understandably so. By the same token, his apparent frustration is also very understandable. Now, part of the reason many players may have felt like they disagreed with Chris Wilson may simply come down to the definition of what an average player is. Most players in any game generally think of themselves as average players, when in fact, if you're posting on Reddit, reading game forums, and otherwise engaging in the community in a manner outside of just playing the game, you most likely are more than an average player. You see comments like, I'm just an average player, I only play 15 hours a week. Like, dude, that's almost a part-time job. And it's also most likely very probable that a lot of players did not bother to thoroughly test how the game feels after the readjustments. They experienced the initial nerfs over the opening weekend, they were not having fun, they were soured by that experience, and they were further biased by all the negativity from everyone to think that loot is still in a bad place, and thus they were primed to be more aware of bad luck and predisposed to be negatively receptive to any further changes. Now, after Bex's post that was received well, she had a follow-up post which was not. Another massively downvoted Reddit post. While she did discuss a number of buffs to players, in the form of drop buffs and difficulty nerfs, one particular thing discussed has made players unhappy. She wrote, quote, "We are also aware that there is a lot of disappointment around certain harvest crafts being removed. Previously, harvest crafting was balanced by how difficult it was to get the crafts that you want. Now that crafts are tradable, harvest power was reduced to be more in line with other crafting methods. We understand that there is a call for us to bring those crafts back, but it isn't really possible while allowing harvest to remain tradable. While this isn't exactly what you want to hear, I can say that this issue was pushed very hard during discussions to see if any compromise could be made. Harvest crafting potential without being gated by rarity is just too high." By this point, the possibility that the devs simply didn't understand what the players were asking for was gone. They clearly understood what players wanted, and they committed to their stance that the changes are for the better. Now, I think amongst all the critique over the past couple of weeks, the clearest and most common recurring theme is that PoE players seem to desire more agency and not less, and they feel that agency is being taken away from them and replaced with randomness. That is, having less deterministic outcomes, and the impression players are getting is that GGG is trying to take determinism out of crafting. So whether it's true or not that drops are better, players feel that they are more random, and they don't want to have to go back to relying on more luck. They want to be able to craft exactly what they want. Now, one thing that should be stressed here that I think is getting lost in the weeds. GGG is an incredibly communicative dev studio, and I feel like the community has taken this for granted. They put out a half dozen messages, more even, since the expansion launched, most of which were from the CEO himself. This entire issue began because GGG's communication pre-league wasn't up to their regular standard of excellence that the community had come to expect from them. I'm seeing a lot of unfair hate being thrown at developers who are, and have been for years, exemplars of what other devs should strive to be with respect to their relationship with their community and their commitment and support to their game. I see some people now treating GGG like they're the worst devs ever, when really the community needs to remember how good they've had it and how good these devs have been. And yes, players are allowed to be upset. They're allowed to be frustrated. They're allowed to be unhappy with the decisions that the devs are making, and they're allowed to express their opinions and their emotions on the matter. But if these players truly want to keep playing the game, want the devs to make changes that they're hoping for, want to keep enjoying the game for the long run, they need to be careful not to cause permanent damage to the relationship between the devs and the community, to not scare the devs into pulling back from the community, making the devs feel like their efforts in communication aren't appreciated, like they should just release expansions and not bother saying anything to the community anymore. Because I can guarantee you, that's what a lot of other devs would have done by now. In some quick Activision Blizzard news, Microsoft has come out and expressed that if their deal to acquire Activision Blizzard goes through, then they intend to bring the company's library of games, including Overwatch, Diablo, and Call of Duty, to Gamepass. Gamepass is Microsoft's subscription service in which you pay your sub fee and you get free access to a rotating catalog of games. So instead of spending $120 in a month to try out 2 new games, you spend $12 in that month and can try out a bunch of different games. Microsoft also reaffirmed its promise to not take the Call of Duty franchise away from PlayStation players. Now, this is pretty significant because if they do this with Diablo 4, well, that's a game that a lot of people are just going to play through the campaign. They'll be happy, and then they'll stop and move on to other games, not because they don't like the game, but just that's how a lot of gamers are. They just play through the campaign and that's it. And they'll likely be able to do that within a month, so that's a lot of people who will basically get to play Diablo 4 for free. This could also mean a revival for World of Warcraft if a WoW sub can be included in Game Pass. Now, speaking of Diablo 4, in some very quick D4 news, community lead Pez Radar gave us a promising hint at beta. In response to a Reddit thread titled, "I'm hoping Diablo 4 gets an extensive beta test covering the endgame as well," Pez Radar replied, "It will." This is big news because the Diablo 3 beta was very limited. You could only play up to level 15 if I recall, up to the Skeleton King in Act 1. It was basically a demo. For Blizzard to beta test all the way to endgame, that's letting people get access to a huge portion of the game, possibly the whole game. So whenever the game hits beta, which I definitely think will happen this year, as early as September even, we could be seeing a lot of what Diablo 4 has to offer. In some quick Diablo 3 news, just a PSA for those unaware of what to do with all their extra angelic crucibles, the new Season 27 drop. If you already have your sanctified items, and you don't know what to do with your extra crucibles, well, save up any normal puzzle rings you find, and sanctify them with the crucibles. This turns the puzzle ring into a sanctified puzzle ring, which will operate like an ancient puzzle ring when you put it into the cube, thus opening a portal to the ancient vault, where you'll get lots of delicious goodies. And if you have no idea what sanctified items are, check out this video here, because that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we fully discussed why Path of Exile players are so upset. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon, and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.